we can all agree that the Lamborghini Countach is the poster car. In fact, when I was a bit younger, 5 or 6 maybe, we had a family friend who was quite a bit older, and he had a poster of one of these on his bedroom wall with a topless lady draped over the bonnet. Happy memories. Now, we first saw the concept for the Countach exactly 50 years ago, and if this car looks this shocking today, imagine what it looked like back in 1971. Over the years, it sprouted all sorts of increasingly mad wheel arches and vents and wings at the back with models like the 500S, the QV and the 25th anniversary. But this is the original, the LP400, the Countach in its purest form. And it's just perfect. Now, the genius of the Countach, or its designer Marcello Gandini, I should say, is that it basically looks like a concept car that's just driven straight out of the motor show hall and onto the road. And there's so many cool touches on this car. I'll just point out a few. And the first is right at the front. It basically doesn't have any front bumper, does it? Just this black strip at the front, just wide enough for a small number plate and your driving lights. And if you look right under there, you'll see a couple of intakes either side. And then there's the headlights. Of course, they got to be pop-up lights, haven't they? Twin circles on these. We'll get a separate shot of that so you can appreciate the genius of those. And then we get to the wheels. Now, this is, of course, the original Countach. Later cars, the 400S onwards, have much wider tyres. If you catch a look at the rear tyres, they basically look like space savers compared to the steamrollers that came next. And look at this sidewall on the tyre, just so plump and juicy. It looks comfortable compared to modern supercars. And who says that supercars need to be on 20, 21-inch rims? This is rolling on 14s. Okay, and then we've got this knacker duct, this intake in the side of the car, kind of a signature graphic for the Countach, and it's just super simple, isn't it? Just this black cutout here, which sums up the rest of the design, really, doesn't it? Some of its parts is absolutely shocking, massively ahead of its time, but the stuff that you're looking at is really simple shapes and simple lines. Then we get here to the pods or the ears or whatever you want to call them. These are the intakes that feed the cool air into the radiators that keep the engine cool. Now, originally on the 1971 concept, these were flush with the bodywork, but they obviously decided they need to get a bit more air in there, and I'm glad they did, because it's a characterful feature, another signature feature of the Countach. Now check this out, this rear wheel arch, I absolutely love it. It could have been just a simple semicircle, but no, Gandini chose this slashed angled line, and it's just one simple line that gives the car so much dynamism even when it's standing still. Okay, and then from round the back, you look down this fantastic engine cover, this slotted rear deck, through a rear window that's actually slightly bigger than you probably thought it would be. And then above that, the narrow little slot, the Periscopo window, which we're going to talk more about in a minute once we get inside the car. And then down here, you've got the tail lights, this really distinctive graphic. You've got the light pods either side, and then this full width connecting bar in the middle, giving you this sort of dumbbell shape. Basically, what I love about this car is it doesn't matter if you're looking at it from the rear, from the side, from the front, you can spot it a mile off. Have a look at that. Do you remember when engines actually used to be interesting to look at rather than just a sort of sea of black plastic covers like we get nowadays? That is a very, very good looking V12. What are we looking at? A 4-litre naturally aspirated V12, 370 horsepower, which, let's face it, is about as much as a high-end hot hatch these days, isn't it? Now, you would assume that a V12 from a 1970 supercar is going to be brittle and temperamental and be breaking down all the time, but not so. These Lamborghini V12s are actually kind of reliable. It's basically the Miura SV engine. It continued in various iterations through the Diablo, through the Murcielago, and was only truly replaced once the Aventador came along. Where you might have some trouble is if you ever need to take it out, because it's quite an interesting layout, this car. The gearbox is ahead of the engine over there, so the drive needs to go through the gearbox, down, back underneath the engine, through the sump and to the rear wheel. So there's no way of dropping the engine out the bottom. You have to lift it up and out this little slot that you're looking at here, which must be a delicate operation. And here's a bonus, look at this. Under here you have actually a really big boot. Well, big compared to other mid-engine supercars that have literally no storage whatsoever apart from, you know, squashed behind your seat or in the passenger seat. You could get quite a few squishy weekend bags in there, assuming you can convince your other half to go on a big road trip with you in your Countach. The only problem I can see is that while that is full width and there's a good deal of space, the slot for putting your stuff in is quite narrow. First world problems. Do you know what? This isn't quite the ergonomic nightmare that I thought it was going to be. We'll start with the seats. You've got a fixed angle on the backrest and the seat squab. You can move them forwards and back, but that's your lot. But compared to the skeletal carbon bucket seats you get in a Hoonicorn Performante or an Aventador SVJ these days, these are like Chesterfield sofas. They are so soft and squidgy and comfortable. I could easily do a long road trip in these. Yes, the pedals are quite heavily offset, but I don't actually mind that too much. Your knees are right up against the steering wheel. So if you're going to do any fast, evasive manoeuvres, you may brush your knuckles on your knees, but I'm not too worried about that. Now, I'm 5'8". If I was 5'9" or more, I'm pretty sure my head would be scraping the headliner. So that's something to look out for. You've also got this gorgeous open gate manual in the middle of the center console here. I'm saying it's gorgeous, it looks gorgeous. I'm yet to drive this car here today. We may have a different relationship with this stick by the end of the day. Center console, again, super simple. You've actually got aircon, despite this being an early 70s car. And then in front of you, just this massive bank of dials. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 8 dials in front of you. What else can I show you? Oh yes, visibility. We should talk about that. Actually not that bad. You've got this normal looking rear view mirror, you've got a slot window behind you. Later models like the QV had a power hump on the engine cover which obscured visibility further, but this one is actually quite a clean view out the back. And if I angle it up, you can see through that periscopo window there, which is designed to increase your field of vision. But field of vision of what? I'm not quite sure. The tops of trees perhaps? It doesn't really work. But isn't that the most Lamborghini thing ever, to try something out, for it not to work, and still to include it on the production car? Gotta love that. And check this out. Wind down windows, which is superb in itself. And look at that, a full 2 inches of opening, that's your lot. You could probably just about get a double cheeseburger through there. And that's it. Okay, so this was the bit in the video when I was supposed to tell you how much of a pig the Countach is to reverse and how you could only possibly do it by opening up the door, sitting on the sill and looking over your shoulder to reverse it that way. In fact, in this LP400, because the view out the back is actually half decent, these wing mirrors are actually pretty effective and you've got the narrower body, so you've got a nice sight line down the side of the car. I could probably do it staying in the driver's seat, but I've always wanted to do this, so forget all that. I'm going to do the sitting on the sill thing. Let's turn the engine on first. We'll give those pumps a little minute to prime. Bit of throttle. There we go. Right, slot it into reverse. Open up the door. I mean, what could possibly go wrong? I wish I had longer legs. Now the key, I'm told, is not to actually use any throttle. You just use the torque of the engine and feather the clutch like that. And look, there we go. You'll just have to imagine a busy supermarket car park behind me. And he stalled it. Okay, so we're going to start by talking about this engine, because where else are you going to start? It completely dominates the experience. It's not particularly hard to drive this car. It's a 5-speed manual, you've got 3 pedals and a steering wheel, but you're just aware that there is a very potent, complicated force behind your head, and that requires a little bit of management. There are a few hiccups in the power delivery at low revs, but pick it up a bit, let the engine rev out, and it actually revs really freely. It sounds fantastic. I mean, listen to this. Oh, that is a noise. That is a noise. It revs all the way to 8,000 RPM, this engine, and it just sounds so guttural and physical and dirty, unlike any supercar that's been built in the last couple of decades, I suppose. It's an old school supercar noise. Is it fast? No, not by modern standards, but trust me, you won't care. Your senses being bombarded by so many other things that you just don't notice how fast you're going, really. Right, we should talk about the gearbox. Really long travel on the clutch. It is quite heavy. You don't quite need Chris Hoy thighs for it, but it gives you a workout. And this stick, I love the gear knob. It's really chunky stem, but it requires, a little bit of extra effort to pop it into the gear that you want. What else? The steering, yeah, unassisted. So at slow speeds is an absolute pig. Once you're up to speed like this, well, it comes alive in your hands. It flows, it feels supernatural. And on slow corners like this, because this is the LP400 on the narrower tyres, you even get little slides on the entry to corners. I'm not thrashing the car around today, but the limits are that much lower, so the amount of fun you can have at normal speeds is that much higher. The brakes, they're not fantastic, par for the course for an old car, I think, but this car has smaller discs than you got on the later models. And we should also mention the ride, because it's really comfy. It glides along this car, stiff springs and squishy sidewalls. That's the way forward. I just want to say a huge thank you to the owner of this car for letting us have a go in it. It's such a special moment. Honestly, it's a massive tick on the bucket list. It is a boyhood dream fulfilled and all those sorts of cliches. But this is such a special car. It's so rare. They only built over 150 of them, around 150. 22 of those were right-hand drive, and only 10 to 12 of those actually came to the UK, like this one, which was bought by a businessman in Bolton for the princely sum of £18,500. These days, it's insured for 1.2 million. What a day this has been. I'm absolutely buzzing. I just can't stop smiling.